Hey everybody, it's Matt. This will be the beginning of part 4 of the arrow build. So doing research, I want to not only have my own napped flint broadhead on here, I also want feathers that I harvested, whether that comes from a grouse, a turkey, some other wild bird, blue jay, seagull. Just kidding about that part. Anyways, I also want to be able to put like a natural protectant on these arrows, like a resin of some sort, but I also want to put my own paint, like a crest on a shield, like a family crest. I want to put my own color code on here. And one of those ways of doing that is with white pine needles. You can make a green pigment out of pine needles. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today. With the pine needles, it's January 4th today, so I don't know how many pine needles I need. I probably brought in too much. So we will see, and it's a pretty straightforward process, but the first thing you want to do is make sure you get the green needles, not the changing color needles, not the off color needles, like these needles that are right here that are half green and half dead. You don't want those. You want all the green because the pigment, the dye is inside the needles, so you want to get those fragments out, and I will show you step by step how to do that. But first we need to get the needles off the branches and then cut them up into small pieces, so you'll get to watch me do that next. I don't know how much this is. This isn't even half the branches I cut. I probably cut too many. So next, I'm going to show you me. Actually, I probably don't even need to tell you. I'm just going to put this in water and steep it. Not going to boil it. I'm going to steep it for about an hour. So I got my diced up, chopped up pine needles. This is white pine needles. I'm just starting with 3 cups of water here. And what I'm going to do is I've got the burner on. And once it's done, it's going to steep for a while, and I'll come back when this is about ready to come out of here. So, see you in a minute. Alright, I forgot to hit record on this step. The simmering water and pine needles were on here, and I went out and picked up a small McCormick container of alum and really used, I don't know what size that is, dumped it in here, mixed it up, and let it simmer for another hour, hour and a half. Cheesecloth. These are lemonade cups from my lemonade business. They're actually just deli storage containers. They come with lids, but we don't need the lids today. I used a rubber band, cheesecloth, and now just letting this all drain. And what I'm going to do is probably strain it twice. So all of these needles will go into the pan and just get pitched. Done with those. But what we want is that lower water. And then we're going to add some more alum to it. And I'm going to use one of these of borax to make it very sudsy. Now what I'll do is I'll put a coffee filter over top of this with a rubber band, strain it again, and then what's in the coffee filter when we're done, well then I'll let it set for 2 or 3 days and dry, and then that stuff will be powder and ground up, and that will be our green pigment, which will probably come out to this forest, army, hunter green, if you will, but that's only my guess. So, alright, next step, straining it again into this cup. Okay, so now I've got cheesecloth on the second container and going to strain it again into here. Look at that hunter green color in that. Okay, now from this point on, I'm going to use more alum and borax, and that will extract the pigment. So what I'm going to do here, fold the coffee filter over like that. Rubber band strategically placed, you know. Alright, so may not need to do a second one of these, but this is what's going to hold the pigment. It's going to dry out and be ground down to my green paint. This is one of my reject arrows. It's too thin down at this end, but I've got more, so I'm just going to use this as a stir stick from here on out. $20 ml borax, got about that much. Just going to dump it in, that much, dump it in. Sudsier the better. So now we're just going to let this sit, strain through, and I'll do it again with a second coffee filter, which I have sitting right over there, and we'll get a second straining. I'm going to go rinse this real quick first, or I'll just go get another cup. All right, so it has been 2 days since I put the pine needles in water with alum and steeped it for at least 2 hours to where the water was reduced in half inside the pan, and then put it over here in a couple cups where I strained it with cheesecloth. And then on the third strain, I went through a coffee filter, and then with what remained underneath, I did a second time through a coffee filter, and then let those 2 cups sit for 2 days. This is the results. There's a little bit of a powder that I kind of scraped off a little bit down in the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that. And this one I haven't scraped a whole lot yet, but you can see the powder building up there. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape all of this down and set it aside because that's turned into a powder and that's good to go. That's white pine pigment out of the pine needles. And it looks like it's, I wouldn't call it green. It's like a yellowish green. But I went ahead and did a little bit of research today and looked up and found out what exactly colors are available in pigments around here. And it comes to find out, color pigmentation is all over the place. Blue, blueberries. Red, strawberries. Remember the charcoal? I did my pine pitch glue. Charcoal, black. I went out and picked a bunch of Staghorn Sumac. I'm going to go ahead and I also have some spinach leaves upstairs that will give me a true green color. And the easiest way to get pigmentation from these, the blueberries and strawberries, just cut up real small and then really just press it through a cheesecloth into, actually you could probably just do it all right into water and boil. You'll get more pigmentation that way instead of pressing like a cold press. Which I'll show you all of that, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So what I'm going to show you today is continuing how to get different colors of pigment. So in this portion of the video, we will do blueberries, strawberries, Staghorn Sumac, and I have some spinach upstairs. So 4 colors, blue, 2 different reds, and the green spinach. So watch me as I go through this. Yeah, it's about as much as I got. This is a 32-ounce cup. So 16 ounces. What is that? 2 cups? But the process is very similar to what I did with the pine needles. So I'll go through the sumac all the way through. I've got a small batch of blueberries, strawberries, and then I'm also going to go upstairs and bring down some chopped up spinach as well. So I'll have 3 more sets of batches to do after this. Cheers. A fast way to process spinach, I have a magic bullet here. And my spinach I have in here, and I added a little bit of water into it. That's it. This is the second time I've used this today. I already got some in here, but look how blenderized this is. All right, so now I have spinach for green, red strawberry, and blueberry. The jury's still out if that's actually going to be blue or if that's going to be more like a purple. And then Staghorn Sumac, which is more like a blood red or velvet color, like velvet sheet cake. Here we go, pouring the sumac. I'm going to strain it. So from here, I'm just going to leave it for a little bit. Just let it strain. And I already have its final destination marked, Staghorn Sumac. And these are the colors I believe it's going to be, is a velvet, like a velvet sheet cake color, or blood red. I'm leaning towards the blood red because it's going on an arrow. So you want that red to be, that blood to be red. So I'm going to give it a few minutes and then I will filter it into that. But I've got one step I want to do before then, and that involves some more alum, and some more borax. I'll go over that step here in a minute. I want that to drain first. So, all right, making native paint is quite the process, especially if I'm going to be doing it right. But I need to know how much spinach I have in here. Need to get all this chlorophyll out. Okay, this is already 2.5 cups. And again, okay, that's taken care of now. So this is already dirty, so what I can do here is remove this cheesecloth. So at this point, anybody want Staghorn Sumac tea? Not using any specific measurement amounts. We already put alum in both of these. Borax, which is just a detergent. So we already have really hot water. I put the alum in first, then the detergent. Okay, so the alum is white. I think I just made a major mistake, because this is no longer red. Yeah, I think I just made a major mistake with this sumac. And just pour it in. All right, kind of had a fiasco with the sumac. I added some alum and some borax, and it turned green. So that's what this is, and this is. This here is the spinach, and that's setting up. You want all that pigment to fall to the bottom, and then I'll slowly draw off the water, and then you just watch me pour the blueberry into here, and I'm going to let that sit just like that for a day or two. And I'm going to go clean this pan and then do the strawberries next. And hopefully that'll turn out a nice bright red, because I messed up over here with the sumac. So, all right, on to the last one. All right, we're on to the last one. So I'm going to do 1 cup of water. Actually, I'm going to do 2 cups of water. I did 1 cup of blueberry and it almost dried out on me. All right, that's the blueberry. My cheesecloth fell into the juice, or into the blueberry juice, and some clumps got away from me. All right, I'll check back in a bit. All right, got the strawberry done. Got it labeled, got it in here. These are the 2 with the Staghorn Sumac. This is the blueberry, the setting up. This is the spinach, and this will be the strawberry. Kind of spilled that pretty fast, huh? It's all right, I'm just gonna let that sit here for tonight. As you can see, it's beautiful red. Okay, so I'm gonna let this, I'll end up taking this cheesecloth off a little bit and squeezing it, getting a little bit more out of there, but I'm gonna go ahead and process this, give it a few days. I'm gonna slowly pour off the top, because on this one I can see settlings on the bottom. That's where the pigment is, so just slowly pour it off until you have just a little bit of water left. I'm gonna lay it out on a flat surface and let it dry. And then scrape. I might even actually just put it into, when I get down to it, just put it inside these coffee filters and then it'll dry. Then I can scrape it off of here just like I did the white pine needles. I'll come back with a final assessment here and show you my colors. All right, left to right, strawberry, you can read that one. The next one is the spinach. Third from the left is blueberry juice. And the one on the right is Staghorn Sumac with alum and borax added, which changed the color to a dark green. So I'm gonna have to do the sumac over again. All right, it's been 24 hours since I've steeped the Staghorn Sumac, blueberries, spinach, and strawberries. Strawberries still looking pretty good. Not all of it has gone through the coffee filter yet today. All of this has gone through this coffee filter and is still in the drying process. I think I'm going to run the blueberry and the spinach. Actually, the spinach I probably won't. I'll try to just pour that off. But because I messed up this Staghorn Sumac and I added alum and borax, it changed the color of this red. So I went out and I picked a few more. So I've got more heads that I'll process today and steep those down, and I'll do that next. All right, so the Staghorn Sumac, I literally just went out with loppers and cut the flower heads off. I did only like 6 or 7 this time, and it's actually quite easy to do. I just need to move a couple of these out of my way a little bit more. And it's literally just trying to roll it between my fingers and my thumb. And this one actually has quite a few that have changed colors already, so I'm not going to use all of this one. Be a little selective. You got a lot of brown in here amongst the red. So it's going to make it a little bit darker than it should be, so I'm going to be selective. And so I'm calling this like a blood red or a velvet red, and you'll see why in a couple hours when I get done steeping it. It won't be as bright of a red as the strawberries were. That one's a brighter red. And when you roll it in your fingers like this too, it also kind of bruises these seed heads a little bit. And all that's going to do is just help get this red pigment out a little bit better. I'm literally just rolling it. And probably the best time of the year to get the brightest red, I would imagine, would be late summer into the fall. Would probably be the brightest color. This time of year, there's a lot that's gone pale, lost its color, chemical change back because of the cold weather. It just turns a darker red. Discolor to a pigment into a powder. This color is going to look pretty sweet on my arrows. In the book about Ishi, he said that the only thing that really the color banding on arrows did was identified who the owner was, both within the tribe and I would imagine in wartime or attack time, war parties, you know. In his book, actually in Saxton Pope's book about Ishi, you know, Kroger and Pope took Ishi back to the Yahi land, west and south of Mount Lassen Volcanic National Park today, and spent a few weeks out there, basically observing Ishi, who was the last wild Indian, in his native ways. How he harvested, how he made his weapons, how he made his spears for spear fishing, and what materials he used. He liked to use hazel for his arrows, mountain juniper for his bows, but his arrows were made of two different woods. The long shaft part was hazel, so that was what you get the straightest. And the last 6 inches were made of a little bit harder wood. I believe Saxon Pope said that the wood that Ishi used while they were out there was a mountain mahogany for the tip. And so he had several shafts, but also several different tips depending on the game. He would have like a blunt tip for smaller game, or an obsidian broadhead that he napped for larger game. They observed Ishi and how he tracked, how he hunted, how he not only used his eyes and his ears, but he also used his nose. I've never used my nose for hunting. The only time I've used my nose if I smell a coyote or a bear, something that smells like a wet dog, you know that smell. But I've never used that smell to track an animal like Ishi did, and how the natives used to do, according to Ishi. All right, I'm just about done here. This last seed head had the brightest red in it. So I just need to go through now and just pull out any remaining little branches that are in here. Always seem to find a few after it starts steeping and water starts heating up. So I'm just going to go through and pull them out now. And of course, a lot of this will filter out when I run this through cheesecloth, but It's already going to be darker than what I probably really want. So any stem or bark material that's going to turn it more brown, I don't want it in there. All right, ended up with about that much. So what I'm going to do is, it's a 32-ounce cup. I don't know how much water I have in here, so I know a lot of guys will and have made YouTube videos showing their knowledge of how to make arrows, and a lot of them have referenced other books. This is not the original copy, but this is one of the books that I'm reading by Saxton Pope. It's called Hunting with the Bow and Arrow. And in this portion of it, Saxton Pope's talking about his time with Ishi. This paragraph says this: the rear end of his arrow was now notched to receive the bowstring. He filed it with a bit of obsidian, or later on with 3 hacksaw blades, bound together until they made a groove 1/8 of an inch wide by 3/8 deep. The opposite end of the shaft was notched in a similar way to receive the head. The direction of this latter cut was such that when the arrow was on the bow, the edge of the arrowhead was perpendicular, for the fancied reason that in this position the arrow, when shot, enters between the ribs of an animal more readily. He did not seem to recognize that an arrow rotates. Here's the key chapter paragraph. At this stage, he painted his shafts. The pigments used in the wilds were red cinnabar, black pigment from the eye of trout, a green vegetable dye from wild onions, and a blue obtained, he said, from the root of a plant. These were mixed with the sap or resin of trees and applied with a little stick or hairs from a fox's tail drawn through a quill. His usual design was a series of alternating rings of green and black starting 2 inches from the near end and running 4 inches up the shaft. Or he made small circular dots and snaky lines running down the shaft for a similar distance. When, with us, he used dry colors mixed with shellac, which he preferred to oil paints because they dried quicker. The painted area, intended for the feathers, is called the shaftment, and not only helps in finding lost arrows, but identifies the owner. This entire portion he usually smeared with thin glue or sizing. Interesting stuff. Hunting with the Bow and Arrow by Saxton Pope. One of the books I've been reading. Another one of the books I've been reading, Saxton Pope was a part of this. Saxton Pope, Theodore Kroeber, and another man by the name of T.T. Waterman. Theodore Kroeber was the curator or the director of the museum in California where Ishi spent the last 6 years of his life. But back on page 191, this book reads this: he preferred the thin, straight stems of hazel to other wood for arrow shafts. As when making a bow, the arrows also were seasonal, lying face up. It was Ishi's custom to make arrows in groups of 5. 5 were carried through the various steps of manufacture together, and only when they were completed and laid aside to season might another 5 be commenced. The hazel stick, which was to become an arrow, was first peeled of its bark. Then any irregularities were straightened by the process of rolling over heated stones. after which it was smoothed with sandstone and given a final polishing by rolling back and forth across the thigh, a technique reminiscent of the hand polishing of fine furniture in which the body oil contributes its finish, applied by hand friction. Arrows were made to measure the distance from the base of the breastbone to the extended index finger, with the left arm stretched along the arrow shaft in shooting position, 29 inches for Ishi. So your arm out this way, so from the breastbone to the tip of your finger would be the length of the arrow. For me, it's also about 29 inches. Some, although by no means at all, of Ishi's arrows were made with a foreshaft of heavier wood, about 8 inches long. In order to fit the two parts of such an arrow together, Ishi used a piece of bone ground to a sharp point, which he placed upright on the earth and held in position with his feet, like a drill bit. Onto this, he set the main shaft perpendicular, rotating it between the open palms of his hand until the tapered hole, an inch or more in depth, had been drilled out. He then cut a spindle at the end of the foreshaft to fit the hole and secured it in the hole with resin or glue. Pine pitch resin, I'm assuming. So that book is Ishi in Two Worlds by Theodora Kroeber. So you got Saxton Pope, Theodore Kroeber. Then I've got a couple other books. This one's called Bows and Arrows of Native Americans by Jim Ham. I've read a little bit of this, but not as much as those other two. This book is Making Indian Bows and Arrows the Old Way by Douglas Spotted Eagle. And a more modern book, one of my favorites, Traditional Bowyer's Handbook, How to Build Wooden Bows and Arrows by Clay Hayes, winner of season 8, I believe, of the TV show on History Channel Alone. But my favorite book would be this one. And I've read this one cover to cover. Absolutely love it. It's 120 years old. This book is titled The Yana Indians by T.T. Waterman. Waterman and Kroeber and Saxton Pope all went out to the Yahi Indian land out by Lassen National Park and spent some time with them, cataloging, journaling, taking photographs. This is an original photograph of Ishi out there, replicating what he did in the wild before he turned himself in. But this book, The Yana Indians, is an original. I've opened it once, read it, and it spent the rest of its time inside of here. This one was written, or I should say released, in 1918 by T.T. Waterman, who was Kroeber's assistant at the museum. So those books is where I'm getting most of my knowledge on how to do this. And you say, Matt, not everything that you're doing is from Ishi. Well, I have other sources than just the books and story of Ishi. Although, Pope and Young, the archery record book for biggest bucks, Pope is Saxton Pope, who was a medical doctor, and Kroeber and Waterman were part of the museum. But I also have Spotted Eagle's book. I have other Native American books. So I have extensive knowledge, but this is all really part one of getting the pigments to, not just for arrow shafts, but I also have plans with pottery. Right now this isn't pottery. They're deli cups. But I like to make some pottery down the road, show how to fire that, make some pottery, and it's the same type of paint that was used on the pottery. They used more earthen clay and stone and hematite and magnetite, for the iron oxide, the reds. But so a little bit about the knowledge that I have in making arrows and arrow shafts. and I decided to bring it to you on camera. Okay, I'm going to stir this and let this steep for about another hour or so. Try to get out all this red pigment, and then I'll bring it back in when it comes time to filter it. Alright, it's been a couple hours, letting this render down. Alright, just let this stay here for a little bit. I'll take the cheesecloth off, and we'll take a look at it then. So you can see already, definitely a darker red than this strawberry. Okay, I'll bring it back when it's all done. So let me show you this real quick. This is sumac, Staghorn Sumac to be specific. But I added alum and borax to it. So this is what the coffee filter filtered out, and it's still kind of tacky, so it's not 100% dry yet. And in the bottom here, there's something that is on the bottom, but I don't know if it's pigment. I think it's borax or alum on the bottom. Because I've got the same, you can see it, build up on the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is I brought some more cups down and set that aside, but I'm going to nicely and then the other one, do the same thing. Pouring off the top, but I know there isn't any Okay, so I'm going to discard all of that. Okay, so that, and then this just needs to get washed. This just needs to get dumped. Okay. Now I'm not going to do, because I learned from that one, not going to add alum or borax or anything. This is what's left of today's batch of Staghorn Sumac. So what I'm going to do, I've got this coffee filter here. And an extra rubber band. And if this was as thick as that with the alum and borax added, this won't go through this filter very well. But because it's hot, and because it's just Staghorn Sumac and water, it might filter through a little bit faster. which is exactly the case. And now it's down to a drip. Which tells me two things. One, it's filtering out debris, sediment, or anything larger than just the liquid. And or two, it's straining pigment and it's starting to collect in the bottom, so it's a little bit harder to filter through. If it's anything like this, which I will scrape and we'll look at that as soon as it's 100% dry, because that's the Staghorn Sumac from yesterday. And then I've even got strained strawberry and the blueberry. So now I'm going to do the same thing with blueberry. Okay, so this will be the blueberry. Make sure it picks up everything that's on the bottom. Curious if there's actually, if it is sediment or pigment that is keeping this from filtering through. Okay, so this is the spinach. Another rubber band. All right, I see sediment in the bottom of this one, so let's filter it through. That's filtering through nicely. So the best directions on getting the actual pigment is to, when you get down to a low amount of liquid like this, they say it's best to spread it out onto something flat and let it evaporate. Well, if I can use a coffee filter, it'll still evaporate. But if it's collected like this, this, or this, it might take a while for that to actually evaporate. And in addition, it'll filter through any remaining liquid that's down in here. And I'm also watching the bottom, see if pigment is sticking to the bottom. As I watch all of these. So I'm going to filter this one more time. And I do see sediment in this one. It's coming through pretty good. Okay, in addition to these colors, this is also the white pine needle from earlier this week. And this stuff, I ground some of it down to a powder inside of here already. And that's 100% dry. So this is like a okay, so there's your white pine pigment. Not a whole lot, but you got to remember, I only had that one pan full of chopped pine needles. But you say, Matt, that's not green. You're right, it's not green. What color does green and white make? Because I added alum and borax to this. If you remember, I stirred it, it got really foamy because of the detergent as a carrier. And so when I strained it into these two coffee filters, if you remember, it had a lot of foam in it. And that foam carried that pigment. So that's why I can grind this down. So that's almost like a type of yellow pigment. But I think what I'm going to do is put a coffee filter on another cup and filter this down. And maybe I'll get a little bit more. So we've got more cups here, more coffee filters. Very much smells pine resin. Okay, so there you have it. I don't know what color I'm going to call this. Like a dark green. So I'll have a dark green, a hunter green. Anyways, making pigments out of plants. Blueberry, spinach, strawberries, Staghorn Sumac, my first try with white pine needles and alum and borax added, and then this is the second batch of, same batch of filtered, again, basically from this, but I didn't add borax or alum to this set. So, let's see how it turns out. And I'll bring you one more update once all of this kind of dries and settles. And hopefully I'll have 6 other coffee filters with pigment in it. Okay, what might be up to a week or two for me is only going to be a few seconds for you. So I'll bring it back in when this is ready to go. For what was just a couple seconds for you was 4 days for me. Blueberry, spinach, strawberry. This is the first attempt with the Staghorn Sumac. This is the second attempt with Staghorn Sumac. And this is the white pine that I've filtered through 3 different times. And so far the best one is this white pine because I think I did it correctly. So this first one of the Staghorn Sumac, this is the first one of the Staghorn Sumac. I added alum and borax to it. Changed it to this funky greenish gray color. And it completely dried. And the pigment is like a gray color, which was supposed to be like a velvety blood red color, kind of like this is back here. But I didn't add anything to this. This is just straight up water and the berries from the Staghorn Sumac. It's not even, it's been 4 days and it still hasn't filtered all the way through the coffee filter. Excuse me. Strawberry. I didn't add any alum or anything to it. And the top of this one still is a little wet. Top of this one is still a little wet. This is the spinach. And you can see where it's dehydrated a little bit down here because you can see a film that's dried on the top. And I can see a bunch of, I'd call it floaties, but it's just probably pigment in the bottom. No alum added. So again, that was probably a mistake because alum will separate the pigment from the water. And then the blueberry, I'm just not sure what's going on here. I got like this thick blueberry sludge in here. And that's what's dripped through. Doesn't have a smell to it. So it's dehydrated, but it's, maybe it'll still end up being something. Who knows? So that's that. Anyways, for the most part, I'm going to chalk this up as somewhat of a fail. Yes, I have this from the white pine, and you can see here the pigment that I already have started there. But what I'm going to do is a third test. This time I'm going to use just alum. I'm going to try spinach, strawberry, Staghorn Sumac, and the white pine. I might find another pigment color to do, but I thought I'd just bring you an update for this, that for the most part, I'm going to consider this a fail. Yeah, these haven't dried yet, and they might still give me pigment, but this one has alum and borax. This one, these, this, and this, none of this has alum in it. And something with the chemical of alum separates the pigment from the water. And it should be just a separation down here in the bottom where you see all the clear water on the top and the pigment on the bottom. So that's going to be my third test, is I'm going to add alum to anything that I render down or that I steep and let it steep for an hour or two, and add the alum and let it render, filter it, and let it sit for a day or two, and we should see a good separation there. So that'll be my next test. And then after that, I'm going to go on over to the earth side of things and do iron oxide, hematite, magnetite, you know, whatever I can get my hands on here in northern Michigan in January. So this is my test results thus far with the plant material. And I think this is good. This is the white pine. This one isn't the color I wanted, but that dried and left me some pigment on the top, only because of borax that's in there. And I think the borax being white changed the color outlook to a nasty greenish gray of the first batch of Staghorn Sumac. This is the second batch. And granted, they're not completely dried or done yet, so I'm going to keep leaving them, and I'll bring maybe a final update on these ones here. But even the spinach was supposed to be a green, unless that's mold. It very well could be mold growing down in there. So yeah, pass, fail, 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 fail. I'm going to chalk up all that paint science experiments as a failure. The only one that really turned out was the white pine needle steeping and then drying and extracting that. And this color, I didn't even get that much. I mean, I can grind that down a little bit further and probably make a paint out of that. But I'm not making this YouTube channel to waste your time. So if you know the other two videos, and video number one, part number one, I should say, you saw me go out and harvest the red osier dogwood and then dry it on something straight like a dowel, and then peeling it and then straightening it over heat. In the second video, you watched me harvest some white pine resin and made that into a pine pitch glue or tar. You also watched me nap a little bit of my flint / chert, and then I also heated up some chert to see if that would become a more concentrated silica within there, and making it more flint-like, and that didn't really work either. And then the third part, I started looking for different types of pigments to use the way the natives did, and I think in this next part, I will be probably just moving on because there's still a lot to do with these arrows. Some of them need to be re-straightened, but the one that I've been working with the most is this guy right here, and he's pretty straight. So season is over for grouse in Michigan. I can't shoot a turkey until spring. The shorelines are all frozen and locked up, so I can't go looking for any new chert. I have napped a couple down, like that guy. I napped him down, and you watched that in the previous video. I napped this guy down into like a little skinner. And then I've done some others that are larger, but I might just skip to the chase for this tutorial. I went ahead and bought online some actual Indian arrowheads. Like that guy there, that guy, that guy, that guy. I mean, I picked up a bunch and got different sizes here. So really what the natives probably did along that arrowhead quarry, and the reason why it's called an arrowhead quarry is because you're going to get small stuff off of there, is they may very well have just taken sharp shards like this and then broke it down even further and then just fastened that to the arrow down like more like a size like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and not really skip that, but just use, these are arrowheads all out of Ohio, still in the Midwest. A guy down there naps these, and a lot of these are probably from their degobage pile, you know, their scrap pile. But I'm going to move on and just kind of give you an intro into part number four. Part number four is I'm going to go ahead and straighten these again, just to finish up getting them straightened, and then actually using the pine pitch glue to fasten this to that. And I'm also going to bring in some sinew that I have from a deer that I shot deer season this last fall. So wrapping up this part number three, if you didn't see me shoot that deer, click the video, not in this corner, but over in this corner. And I don't have the actual shot on video, but I have the recovery. And we will start part number four with continuing the assembly of our arrows in our primitive arrow build. So again, this is Matt with M32 Outdoors for Trees, Wildlife, and Outdoorsmen. And in this case, primitive arrows meet. See you on the next one.